Let's bring in James Woolsey, former director of the CIA and chairman of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Sir, it's good of you to join us today and to share some perspective on this. You and I were talking about how we remember Europe before the EU, visiting several countries there, and it was quite different. Then we see how the EU transferred everything, and now we're seeing this Brexit.
Yes.
And well, it's just causing a lot of contention and turbulence.
I think there's several things going on. One is that the EU got very, very control-focused. Every little thing, the number of blueberries that you could have in a carton, I mean, they were really regulatory.
It's too much.
That put some people off, definitely. Secondly, Angela Merkel and the immigrants from the Mideast, it's one thing to open yourself up to migration. The United States is a nation of immigrants. We all, back one generation or two or three, are immigrants. But Germany took it as a moral cause that they had to bring a lot in at once, and they started having some really ugly circumstances, rapes of women in town squares and so forth. And that's a problem. And then in the meantime, as they've started this separation and divorce, which is kind of what it is, you have a circumstance. It's sort of as if the family next door that are good friends and neighbors of yours are getting a divorce, and it starts to turn kind of ugly.
I like the way you mentioned that, because when you look at a divorce situation, the children are always the innocent people who get blindsided by it, and then they find that everything's divided.
Right.
So in this situation, you have these particular countries that are looking at this and saying, well, do we need a divorce from the EU as well, which is why you have Chancellor Merkel trying to hold on to some calm. But she's meeting with Francois Hollande, the president of France, on Monday, as well as the Italian foreign minister. What do you think these other countries might do?
Well, it changes from one to the other, but take Scotland, which might be, say, one of the children of the marriage, an older child. It's been around for quite some time. But Scotland has now voted twice to stay with the EU. But if Britain is leaving the EU, I mean, and what does Scotland want to do? What is the child in the marriage? Who do they want to go with? What do they want to have their life like? And there's I think, a very complex situation going from country to country. My biggest concern is NATO.
NATO,
because what I'm worried about is that Putin is going to use either the chaos or the growing disturbances of all of this to do something like grab part of Estonia. I mean, Estonia is essentially in the suburbs of St. Petersburg, and he just licks his chops at taking control or partial control of one of the Baltic states, and that could destroy NATO if we don't respond right.
So how should the United States respond to that particular threat?
We would have to move in with large amounts of military forces, and we would have to move in, I think, with our allies. We've got to get the allies with us, which is one thing that gets disturbed with this business and Brexit and so forth. But we have got to be firm on this. After having been so flaccid with respect to the red line in the sand and telling Syrians not to cross it, and then they cross it, and we say, whoops, well, let's let the Russians handle it. That was one of the worst decisions that's been made in modern American foreign policy, and Russia is just sitting over there puffing up their chest and kind
of salivating, actually.
Oh, yum, yum. Yes, exactly.
Mr. Woolsey, you always bring a nice, fresh perspective and an accurate one for us to really listen to, and appreciate your years of experience and service to the country.
Great to be with you again.
All right. We'll have more coming up on this as we continue to follow the developments. Laura?